All right, let's get right into it. We all have a mind, right? But how many of us actually know how it works? I mean, really works, under the hood. Today, we're going to take a look at the Abhidhamma, which is basically an ancient technical manual for the hidden operating system that's running our entire lives. So to kick things off, here's a wild thought to chew on. We walk around thinking of ourselves as a solid thing, a noun, a me, an I. But what if that's totally wrong? What if you are actually a process, a constant, high-speed verb of becoming, not some static thing just sitting there? That idea, that shift in perspective, is really at the heart of everything we're about to explore. So what is this Abhidharma anyway? Try to set aside any preconceptions. This isn't really about religion or blind faith. Think of it more like a super detailed psychological map, a schematic of your own consciousness. It breaks down every single moment of experience into its tiniest little parts, showing us exactly how the machine works. Okay, to even begin to understand this system, we first have to get our heads around one huge idea. The reality we experience actually has two layers. There's the picture we see, and then there are the tiny pixels that make up that picture. Let's dig into that. Think about your day-to-day life. It feels pretty seamless, doesn't it? It's just like watching a movie. We see people, we see cars, we see a whole world out there that seems solid and continuous. And we get so caught up in the story playing out on the screen, we completely forget it's just a projection. But here's the twist. What is a movie, really? It's not one continuous thing. It's just a whole bunch of individual, static pictures, right? Still frames flashing by so fast that they create the illusion of movement. Well, the Abhidhamma says our consciousness is exactly like that. It's not a solid entity, but an unbelievably fast stream of separate mind moments, flashing in and out of existence. And this leads us to this key concept of the two truths. On one hand, you have conventional truth. That's the movie, that's the story of me driving my car down the street. On the other hand, you have ultimate truth. That's the raw data, the individual pixels, the mind moments, and particles flashing on and off. The Abhidhamma is all about learning to see past the movie and understand the pixels themselves. All right, so if our mind is just a process of flashing frames, how fast are we talking? This is the part where our normal ideas about time just completely fall apart. So let's take a look at the sheer, mind-boggling speed of this mental operating system. Okay, get ready for this, because this number is a little hard to wrap your head around. In the time it takes you to snap your fingers, the Abhidhamma says something like 1 trillion mind moments can pop into existence and then vanish. 1 trillion! That means the you that started this very sentence is long gone. We're not a thing, we're a waterfall, a constant, dynamic, ridiculously fast flow of change. Now, these trillions of moments aren't just random static. Each and every one has a specific quality, or you could say a flavor, and they're all rooted in one of two basic categories. You have unwholesome moments, which are based in things like greed, hatred, and just plain not understanding. And then you have wholesome ones, which are rooted in their opposites, generosity, kindness, and wisdom. Every single moment is one or the other, literally building our reality from the ground up. So this leads us to the most important question of all. If our entire reality is built out of these tiny, fleeting moments, where does choice come in? When do we actually create karma, the law of cause and effect? Well, the Abhidhamma pinpoints the exact sequence, the source code, you might say. It turns out that every single time we perceive something, whether it's seeing a splash of color or hearing a single sound, our mind follows a totally standardized 17-moment-long process. It's like a tiny automated cognitive assembly line that processes every single bit of sensory input in the exact same way every time. So let's just simplify that process. First, there's contact with something. Then the mind recognizes it and investigates it. But look here, at step 4, Javana. This is it. This is the whole ball game. After the mind has processed the raw data, there's this tiny window of 7 incredibly fast moments where the mind reacts. This is the choice point. This is where we either lash out with anger or grasp with desire, or we can consciously choose a different path, like patience. And this is exactly why the Buddha said so clearly, I say, monks, that volition is karma. Volition, that's the intention, the mental push, the choice that happens in that split-second Javana phase. That is karma. It's not so much about the big action you take later, it's about the internal quality of that lightning-fast reaction in the mind. That's what sets the whole chain of cause and effect in motion. So, a choice is made in a fraction of a second. What happens next? How does the intention from those few Jhavana moments ripple out across our lives? This is where the model gets incredibly precise about how cause and effect actually work over time. Now check this out. Even within that tiny 7-moment Jhavana window, the intention has different levels of power. The very first moment is the weakest, and its result is most likely to show up in this lifetime. The 7th and final moment is a bit stronger. Its result tends to ripen in the very next life. But the 5 in the middle, Jhavanas 2 through 6, those are the heavy hitters. They're the most powerful, and their results can ripen in any future life, whenever the conditions are just right. To see how this can play out in a real, dramatic way, let's look at the story of Moggallana. This guy was one of the Buddha's absolute chief disciples. He was famous for being a master of psychic powers. I mean, he could travel through dimensions, do all sorts of incredible things. You'd think a person like that would be totally invincible. But way back in his past, many lifetimes ago, he had done something truly awful to his own parents. And the powerful karma from those middle Jhavana moments of that act had just been sitting there, dormant, in his consciousness stream, waiting for the right conditions to finally ripen. And in his last life, as a great disciple, they did. And so, despite all his incredible godlike powers, when that heavy past karma finally came due, his abilities just failed him. For a critical moment, they just weren't there. He was cornered by a group of bandits and brutally murdered. It's a really stark story, but it illustrates the point perfectly. No one can outrun the results of their own intentions. The echo of a single moment can ripple across lifetimes. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a bit like inescapable fate, right? But it's actually the exact opposite. Understanding the code is the very first step to rewriting it. Once you know the process, you gain the power to actually step in and change it. Let's see how that works. The practice for this is called the 4 right efforts, and it's like a super practical programming guide for your own mind. First, you try to prevent negative mental states from even showing up. Second, if they do manage to pop up, you work on actively getting rid of them. Third, you make an effort to cultivate positive states. And fourth, once those good states are there, you work to maintain them and make them stronger. It's this constant active process of mental gardening, really. And here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway of all. Once you see the mechanism, that 17-moment process, the Jhavana choice point, the way karma ripens, you are no longer just a passive victim of your own mind. You're not just along for the ride anymore. You can become the conscious operator. You get to have a say in the very process that creates your reality. Which brings us right here, to this very second. In the next trillionth of a second, a new mind moment is about to arise in your consciousness. So, knowing everything we've just talked about, what's it going to be?